Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope everything's good wherever you are. Guys, Eddie Hearn recently in a comment said that they would be willing to go in the Andrade and Benavidez could happen next. They would be willing, Demetrius Andrade would be willing to go into that fight right away, and he'd be willing to go into that fight next, which is great news. I like that fight. I like that fight because obviously we know that Demetrius Andrade wants to fight, or not wants to fight, but he's looking to fight Zach Parker next to become like Canelo's mandatory for the WBO. Canelo doesn't really have any intention of fighting Demetrius Andrade. That fight's not going to happen. Canelo's got other plans, bigger fish to fry, as you would say. So the logical fight isn't David Benavidez. David Benavidez has also called out Demetrius Andrade to make a fight, which would be a very good fight, a very fun fight, a fight that I think we'd all be pretty happy to see. I really like that fight between Andrade and David Benavidez. I think it's a proper fight. I think it's a really good one. I do. I think it would make a lot of sense for both guys. Both guys need marquee opponents. Benavidez isn't for anyone. Now, Benavidez is fighting David Lemieux. Now, before people start shooting me down and start saying, well, David Benavidez is fighting Lemieux. Well, after the Lemieux fight, Benavidez should win that. And then after that, that's when they're willing to go into that fight, right? So they probably wait for Benavidez's fight with Lemieux and then go straight into a fight with David Benavidez after. I can't remember, when is David Benavidez fighting Lemieux? I think it's soon. Is it March? I think it's soon. So they'd be willing to go into a fight with David Benavidez right away, which is obviously great news. So Andrade would forget the Parker fight, according to what Hearn was saying. Or maybe he fights Parker and then straight after that fight, if he wins, they go straight into a Benavidez fight. I think that's what they mean. I think, listen, at the end of the day, I think Andrade has got to the point of his career where he just needs a big fight. Forget about the eliminator. Forget all about that nonsense, because I'm pretty sure David Benavidez Andrade fight would probably be made an eliminator for the title anyway, because it's such a good fight that I think that they'll probably make that an eliminator for a world title anyway, of some world title. They'll probably put them ahead just because of the fact the names and the fact that they're both respected fighters in that, or in world boxing. So I wouldn't be surprised, and it would just have a lot of attention on it. So they'll probably make that a mandatory challenger for one of the titles anyway. So I just think that Andrade should maybe forget about the Zach Parker fight and go straight into a David Benavidez fight, wait it out, and then just go straight into a Benavidez fight. Benavidez would fight Andrade. I think both of them are in a position that they'll fight each other. Benavidez has already called him out. I think Benavidez wants that fight because Benavidez also wants to prove himself against the top tier opponents. So I think Benavidez would take that fight in a heartbeat as well. So it's just a fight for me that makes a lot of sense. I think both guys need each other. I think both guys need big fights. Both guys need, marquee names. And I think both of them are good fights for each other. So yeah, I'd like to see that fight. I'd like to see Andrade and Benavidez fight each other. Obviously, yesterday we had Jacobs Ryder, and Ryder ended up winning. If Jacobs had won that, he would have also been in the mix, and he could have been involved in some good fights. I would favor Andrade and Benavidez to beat Jacobs. But unfortunately, Jacobs didn't get the decision. Ryder got the decision, which I thought was a joke, to be honest with you. I think Jacobs won that fight handily, like 8-4, quite comfortably. I just don't see how the judges gave that fight to John Ryder. I just don't see it. But I think the Benavidez-Andrade fight really, really excites me. It does. Benavidez and Andrade, I just think stylistically great fight. You got one boxer, you got one guy who's a fast-handed guy who comes forward. I like that fight. I really do. I think it's a great fight. I think it's a really, really good fight. So yeah, I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to if they make that fight, because I think the winner of that fight probably deserves a Canelo fight, rightfully, and I think the winner of that fight probably puts themselves in a great position to get a Canelo fight. So yeah, if that fight is made, the winner of that fight really puts themselves in a good position, right? So hopefully they can make that fight. Hopefully they can make it happen, and hopefully that fight does happen because, like I said, the winner of that fight really puts themselves in a solid position, a really solid position to, fight Canelo Alvarez. Not just fight for a world title, because I'm pretty sure if Canelo was to vacate, they'll fight for a world title. That's comes with the territory. But I think they'll even be in more demand, and I think the public would then, the winner of that fight would be in huge demand to get a Canelo fight. And I actually think the public might actually demand it, and that's what a lot of these guys don't understand. Like your Benavidez, your Plants obviously fought Canelo, but your Benavidez, your Charlos, if they were to fight one another, if they beat one another, if they beat the winner of the fights when they fight each other, puts themselves in a great demand for a Canelo fight, and actually the public would get behind that as well. The problem is right now, all of these guys are calling out Canelo Alvarez, and they don't want to fight each other because they know their risk to each other. And they know if they lose, that the Canelo fight is completely dead. Do you know, it's a bit like the Amir Khan, Kell Brook Mayweather situation, where Amir Khan was gunning for Mayweather, but he didn't fight Kell Brook because he knew Kell Brook was a risk, and he knew if he lost to Kell Brook, then the Mayweather fight would be completely done. And it's the same way with Benavidez, Andrade, Charlo. They don't want to fight each other because they know a loss against each other would kill the big fight against Canelo Alvarez. Because if they lose to, whoever loses that fight isn't going to get the Mayweather fight. Isn't going to get the Canelo Alvarez fight. So that's why they're not fighting each other, because they're all waiting for the Canelo Alvarez payday. But here's the thing that they got to understand: one or two of them won't get the Canelo Alvarez fight. Like, Andrade doesn't seem like he's going to get that. And so I think he's resigned to the fact that he isn't. And I think he's willing. And I think Benavidez is also willing, because I think Benavidez probably thinks that it's not just about Canelo. I want to fight the other top guys, And I think that's why I think Benavidez is more willing to fight any of these guys. I just think that, like, all of the others have to get, into the same mindset. I think Charlo is looking for the Canelo fight. And I'm not sure whether Charlo will fight Benavidez or Charlo will fight Andrade, because he doesn't seem to be as... For me, he doesn't seem to be as keen, on fighting Benavidez. Or, we know that, when there was talks about him fighting Benavidez, there was talks about, Benavidez needs to get vaccinated. Then when he was fighting Andrade, he's a horrible fight. Like, it just doesn't seem like he was ever keen on fighting these guys. Now, they are talking about Charlo and Plant fighting, which would obviously be a very good fight. But I think this Benavidez and Andrade fight is a fight that I would really like to see. I think stylistically, it's a great fight. I've had a lot of stick by saying that I think Andrade outboxes Benavidez, and a lot of people think that Benavidez just walks straight through Andrade. But again, it's a matter of opinion. It's a matter of what people seeing things differently. I just want to see the fight. I don't care who wins. I don't really have a horse in the race. I don't care if Andrade or Benavidez, whoever wins the fight, it doesn't bother me. I just want to see both guys in good competitive matchups. I think both of them are really good fighters. I think both of them have a lot of ability. Both of them have their own attributes where they're weak and strong. And I just want to see both guys tested at a good world level, good high level. That's all I want to see. I couldn't care less about who wins the fight. It doesn't bother me. I just want to see a good competitive fight where the fans are excited. We're looking forward to it, because these are good world level fighters. And unfortunately, they're not fighting one another, and they're fighting guys that are a lower level, building up their resumes, or guys that are slightly past their best. But for me, that doesn't do anything. I want to see them fight each other in their prime, good fighters fighting each other. That's what I want to see. That's what gets me excited. And that puts them in a better position to get the fight that they want to get, the big cash, the big payday that they all crave against Canelo, and that puts them in a better position. If Andrade beats David Benavidez, that puts him in a very solid position to get the Canelo fight, because the demand for the Canelo fight would be massive then if he beats Benavidez. The same with David Benavidez. If he beats Andrade, the demand for the David Benavidez-Canelo fight becomes huge. So by fighting each other, it puts themselves in a great position to get a fight with Canelo. But the problem is, it also comes with a risk, because they know fighting each other, they could lose. I do think, however, Andrade and Benavidez have got to the point where they don't really care about that anymore. I still think Charlo probably does, and he probably still thinks he's in line for a Canelo fight. But I think Benavidez and Andrade have probably got to the point where they feel that the Canelo fight might not happen. So they might as well fight each other and make a good payday, get a good payday, and put themselves in a much stronger position in terms of how they're viewed. And actually, then the fight with Canelo might actually be demanded by the fans, and Canelo might have no choice but to consider them. Because that then the fight becomes bigger. The Canelo fight becomes bigger with them because they would have beaten another top name. Which, let's be honest, Plant. What's his name? Benavidez, Charlo, Andrade. None of these guys have fought each other. None of these guys have fought one another and got a standout name on their resume, right? By fighting each other, they'd have a standout name. And then the demand for the Canelo fight becomes even bigger. But by not fighting each other, for me, they're hurting their own legacies because they're waiting for one guy that might not fight them. And it's the same with the lightweight division. We got Ryan Garcia, we got Gervonta Davis, we got Teofimo Lopez, we got Lomachenko. Apart from Lomachenko and Lopez, Haney, Kambosos now as well. They're not fighting each other. They're not fighting each other, and we're waiting for them to fight each other. But we've only had one combination, which is Lopez and Lomachenko fighting. Apart from that, none of the others have fought each other. And for me, it damages the sport when the best guys are not fighting the best guys. They need to fight one another, man. They need to fight one another. They need to get in the ring with each other and give the fans a great fight, because the fans want to see the best fight the best. We want to see the best fight the best. And unfortunately, in boxing at the minute, the best doesn't seem to always fight the best. And the lightweight division is a good example. The super middleweight and the middleweight division is a perfect example. We had Charlo, Andrade, Golovkin, and Murata, and it seemed like Golovkin was going to fight Murata. That fell through. Don't know what's happening there. And it just seems like it's not good when the champions aren't fighting champions. The champions are fighting guys that are a slightly lesser tier, but they're not fighting the other champion. We want to see one face, one name, one guy hold all the belts, like we did with 140-pound division with Josh Taylor and with Canelo Alvarez at 168. And, we want to see the best fight the best. It seems like in boxing, there's just too much politics, and it just stops these big fights happening. There were different promoters, and the risk of losing and potentially losing your cash cow. And there's too much of that. Because here's the thing. It's like, for example, Gervonta Davis and Ryan Garcia. Like, Golden Boy promote Ryan Garcia. Mayweather promotes Gervonta Davis. Neither, and with the others, they're with different promoters as well. Nobody really wants to take that risk because they know that this is our cash cow, because they're with different promoters. If our guy loses, that other guy will become bigger, right? And our fighter loses his credibility, so our fighter won't be as sellable and won't be as big anymore. So it's the fear of losing with these promoters, especially when they got a cash cow. That's why they don't want to put him in there with a risky guy. Like, look, Ryan Garcia was being talked about fighting Isaac Cruz, talked about fighting Jojo Diaz, but then all of a sudden we hear a guy that he's fighting that's we've never heard of, because it's the risk factor. I feel like a lot of these guys, what they do is they inline, or they basically put news out there. They're going to fight this guy to get, for promotion. But then when it comes down, they're not actually willing to fight those guys because it's a risk. And they risk their fighter taking an L because they know that how much that will damage their fighter's brand. And when you've got a commodity or you've got a fighter like Ryan Garcia who potentially could do huge numbers, who potentially is a massive mega star, you want to match him right because you don't want him to lose, because if he loses, then the financial mileage that he had decreases, and that's what the promoters don't want. So hence why there's a lot of not fighting one another. And I hope with the super middleweight division, it's kind of different, because here's the situation where there's one cash cow where if you fight him, the amount of money you're going to make is incredible. And neither of the other good guys that are just below Canelo want to fight each other, because they know if they fight each other, it's a risk. They lose, they're not going to get a Canelo payday. So that's the problem. That's the problem we've got in the super middleweight division, the middleweight division. Everyone's looking for the Canelo fight. Look, Golovkin even, he's looking for the Canelo fight. Charlo looking for the Canelo. These are middleweight. Andrade's looking for the Canelo fight. Benavidez looking for the Canelo fight. Everybody's looking for the Canelo fight, but they're not really looking to fight each other. But Benavidez and Andrade, to me, are two guys that I actually think that want to fight each other. And I think this is probably going to be a fight that probably gets made out of all the rest. You know, Charlo Plant might get made as well now. That's a good fight. And also, they're under the same promotional banner. So if the Canelo fight doesn't happen with Charlo, I won't be surprised if they do make the the Charlo Plant fight for both guys. But yeah, let's see, man. Let's see how it all plans out. What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts. David Benavidez, Andrade, how do you see that one playing out? Do you think it happens? Who wins if they do fight? And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.